Suge Knight. They was gonna squash this East Coast, West Coast before fucking Big was dead.
Gene Deal just made a statement that changed the entire narrative. As questions swirl around what was shown and what wasn't, his words pointed to footage the public has never seen and motives that don't quite add up. But this isn't just about missing clips. And what surfaces next could reshape how this story is understood. Why Gene Deal says he dropped out. Gene Deal, the former security detail for Sean Diddy Combs, has publicly stated that he was initially slated to appear in Sean Combs' The Reckoning, but ultimately opted out after what he describes as an unsatisfactory meeting with the production team.
You know, I thought I was gonna be in the documentary at first until I started talking to that director.
According to Deal's account circulating on social platforms and YouTube clips, the producers failed to address his concerns about how his testimony and potential footage would be presented. Sources close to the production indicate this kind of vetting meeting is standard for documentary participants, who are usually briefed on editorial direction, legal safeguards, and narrative framing before filming begins. Deal's decision to walk away, despite being a potential first-hand witness to events discussed in the series, raises questions about creative trust, participant comfort, and editorial transparency in high-profile documentary projects. His absence from the final cut stands in contrast to other insiders interviewed in the 4-part series released by Netflix on December 2, 2025, suggesting a divergence between what Deal was willing to share under the filmmaker's terms and what was ultimately included. What the director allegedly told Deal about 50 Cent's role. One of the most significant claims Gene Deal has made is that the documentary's director assured him 50 Cent did not have creative control over what ultimately made it into the film, despite 50 Cent being an executive producer. This statement, if accurate, aligns with Netflix's public defense of the documentary's editorial independence.
Bruh, you can't tell me to love my enemy. You can't tell me to turn the other cheek as these niggas out here is doing. You know what I'm saying? These niggas want to turn the other cheek. I don't play those games.
The platform and the director have officially stated that although Curtis 50 Cent Jackson served as an executive producer, he did not control the creative direction or final edit of Sean Combs' The Reckoning, and that the footage used was obtained legally. Independent reporting confirms Netflix insisted the material was acquired with rights and that Jackson's role was advisory and facilitative rather than editorially sovereign. However, critics, including Diddy's legal team, dispute this, arguing that Jackson's position and long-standing feud with Combs effectively influenced narrative choices and public perception. Deal's recounting of the director's assurance illustrates the tension in documentary production between sponsorship, executive backing, and objective storytelling. Whether producers' assertions about control are sufficient to allay concerns about bias remains an open question in media analysis circles. The tease of more footage, receipts. Perhaps the most talked about assertion from Gene Deal is the suggestion that additional footage or evidence exists beyond what Netflix publicly released. This plays into the broader controversy surrounding 50 Cent's claim that he holds over 140 hours of unreleased Diddy footage that was not included in the 4 episodes of Sean Combs' The Reckoning, and that he might release more publicly or on platforms like YouTube.
Puff went upstairs, he said, yo, he did what? And as Puff was walking up the steps, I said, yeah, he ran, man. And he said, why you tell him I ran? Why you ain't tell him I took a left?
Deal implies that what audiences saw is only a fraction of a much larger collection of materials capturing interactions, conversations, or incidents linked to Diddy and his circle. In the context of documentary filmmaking, unused footage is common. Projects shoot far more material than can fit in a finished piece. But Deal's specific suggestion that he has custodial access or insight into additional receipts adds a layer of complexity. Investigators and commentators have noted that how such footage is stored, who owns it, and whether it can legally be made public are all significant questions. Some online clips attributed to Deal claim he intends to share or leak portions that were excluded from Netflix's version, although independent verification of these clips and their contents is not yet available. How the documentary handles contested footage. The inclusion of secret or contested footage in Sean Combs' The Reckoning has been central to its reception and controversy. Diddy's legal team has labeled the documentary as a shameful hit piece that includes stolen material that was filmed for Combs' own potential project and never meant to be public. They argue the footage's acquisition was improper, emphasizing that Combs had been documenting his life for a future documentary. Footage of him filmed 6 days before his 2024 arrest became a flashpoint in the dispute.
Gene paid his dues because I came here and talked about the character of this dude who wanted me dead. I been knew that.
Netflix and the documentary's director maintained they obtained all rights to the footage through legal channels, and that 50 Cent's executive producer credit did not equate to control over editorial decisions. This dichotomy highlights the larger ethical and legal debates in documentary journalism. What constitutes authorized material, who owns raw footage, and how conflict of interest affects public perception. The debate has also touched on how respect for consent, confidentiality, and participant agency should be negotiated when subjects and their associates disagree with release strategies. The presence of this contested material, and Deal's remarks about having even more to offer, amplifies questions about visibility, power, and narrative framing in contemporary documentary storytelling. The footage controversy: who really provided what? One of the central disputes surrounding Sean Combs. The reckoning involves how the private footage of Diddy ended up in the documentary and who had control of it. 50 Cent and Netflix have insisted the uncut material was legally obtained, and the film's director, Alexandria Stapleton, has stated they had the necessary rights to use it. Stapleton also said efforts were made to keep identities involved in sourcing the material confidential.
That's what it is, bro. And I just hate that they are allowed and they can't be sued for doing stuff like that, man. And that's what, if you're gonna do anything, you should be able to sue somebody.
However, critics have challenged this explanation and suggested alternate accounts. One emerging theory from industry commentary is that the footage may not have come directly from Diddy's own team, but rather through intermediaries, reportedly due to payment disputes or contractual lapses with the crew originally filming Combs for his own project. The suggestion is that a freelancer or third party may have provided or sold the material to those working with Netflix and 50 Cent, raising complicated questions about ownership and consent. From an investigative perspective, the debate touches on documentary ethics and the chain of custody for source material, whether footage intended for one purpose can lawfully be repurposed by another storyteller, and how payment and contract issues can create loopholes that affect narrative control. As various parties offer differing accounts, the question of who really provided the footage remains a key unresolved thread in the broader story. Legal pushback and claims of unauthorized use. Almost immediately after Sean Combs, The Reckoning premiered on Netflix, legal pushback from Diddy's camp highlighted the contentious nature of the footage used in the series. Diddy's legal team issued a cease and desist letter to Netflix, claiming that the documentary includes stolen footage that was never authorized for release, and labeling the series a shameful hit piece.
Who gave her those lawyers? I want people to think.
The cease and desist pointed specifically to material that appears in promotional clips and within the episodes. Footage of Combs in a hotel room days before his arrest discussing legal strategy and personal matters with advisors. Diddy's representatives argued that he had been filming his life for decades and that Netflix's use of that footage without his explicit consent was unfair and unlawful. Netflix, for its part, countered that it had secured the rights legally and stood by the inclusion of the material. This legal tussle underscores the complex interplay between intellectual property rights, personal privacy, and public interest in high-profile documentary filmmaking. The public argument over authorization also fuels skepticism about narrative legitimacy, especially when one party views the project as neutral journalism and the other sees it as an intrusion into material meant for a future self-narrative. As legal demands and public statements continue to circulate, the question of whether the footage was truly authorized remains a central point of contention. Public reaction, Reddit and online debates on authenticity beyond formal statements and legal filings. Public reaction, especially in online communities, reveals significant division over the documentary's authenticity and purpose. On platforms like Reddit, users have argued various points. Some emphasize that the series brought forward previously unseen receipts and corroborated claims with context, while others cast doubt on its journalistic objectivity given 50 Cent's involvement and long-standing feud with Diddy.
You know what I'm saying? They wasn't able to tell that story because they didn't have no intel on that story or what went down, or they didn't do they.
One recurring theme is the question of bias versus reportage. Some commentators argue that the documentary's reliance on certain sources and footage creates a narrative that feels more like personal warfare dressed as investigative media rather than impartial documentation. Others point to specific elements of the footage, such as conversations and scenes that had not been publicly available before, as evidence that the series did offer new insights regardless of motivation. Additionally, discussions around how footage was acquired, whether through contractual disputes, third-party permissions, or other means, suggests that audiences are as curious about how the story was assembled as what it contains. These digital debates reflect broader questions about trust in media, the role of personal history in shaping narrative framing, and how public platforms influence perception of documentary credibility. The story surrounding the missing footage is far from finished. What began as a documentary has turned into a deeper question about control, credibility, and what the public was never meant to see. Gene Deal's claims have opened new lines of scrutiny, and as more voices step forward, the gap between what was released and what may still exist continues to widen. Motives are being questioned, timelines are being re-examined, and the role each figure played is still coming into focus. If more material surfaces, it won't just add context, it could change how this entire situation is understood. Stay tuned, because what comes next may force a reckoning no one is prepared for.